Hello everyone, welcome to Crazy Geeks, and it's me Roshan Shrestha. Today we'll be trying to talk about various stuffs related with C programming in an approximate hour time frame. Let's begin the process. We'll be talking about what is programming language, what we try to achieve on this particular domain. Then we'll be talking about what is C programming language. Then our concern will be shifting towards compilers, what are its types. Then we'll be writing our very first program, which is termed as Hello World program. After that, we'll be taking some user inputs and we'll be performing some mathematical operations on those inputs. Then for conditions checking, we'll be playing around with if-else statements, and multiple conditions would be handled using if-else if. Then there will be some nesting stuff taking place. Then we'll be talking about switch statements, its advantages and drawbacks. Then what is loop, its types, how they are used. After that, a user function would be displayed, along with which we'll be talking about its advantage and types of user-defined function. Then we'll be moving towards array, that is collection of similar data type. We'll try to implement some sorting technique there. Then we'll be talking about strings and demonstration regarding some of the strings library function. Then for different data type handling, we'll be talking about structure. Then we'll be wrapping this particular discussion by playing around with file handling mechanism, and all these stuffs would be carried out within the time frame of approximate 60 minutes. Let's begin. Programming language. It's a normal concatenation between programming and language. Language stands for means of communication. That is, we need to communicate with something. In our case, that something would be system or hardware or machine. So what happens here is programmer writes a program following a predefined set of rules that is termed as syntax, and that particular structure or program communicates the requirement of the programmer or user to the hardware, which then produces the output as per our requirement. The ideal term while talking about programming language would be freedom. It provides us with infinite possibilities. Now, talking about C programming language, it's one of the programming languages among many of the programming languages available at our access. There are various programming languages like C++, Java, C#, Python, etc. On C programming language, it's defined as a general purpose programming language, and one of the exciting part of C programming language is its efficiency while communicating with system or hardware. And talking about its brief history, it was developed in early 1970s. It was the time when the computer development sector was not in stable state. At that time, C programming was pretty much instrumental in playing its role in order to take the scenario in the current aspects. Now, talking about compilers, IDE standing for Integrated Development Environment. For now, we can consider these IDEs as normal software on which we'll be carrying out our task of writing the program. There are various options available regarding the selection of IDEs. Some of them are code blocks, Dev C++, similarly Turbo C. And if you are trying to run the C programming language program on Mac, then for Mac it would be feasible to install Xcode, or NetBeans will be fine as well. Let the code speak now. I've written 1 hour demo session is my project name. You can write anything as per your requirement. If you want to check it, you can begin by creating a new project, then selecting console application, go, then select C programming and provide the name as per your requirement. You can write something like test 1 hour demo. You can select the location for creating the project. I've already selected here. I'm going to leave it unchanged, then press next, finish. This is what we are provided with. This is our very first program in C programming language, which is termed as Hello World program. And before moving any further, I believe you guys have already installed any of the compiler at your end. If that's not the case, then nothing to worry about. Make sure to install the compiler at your end. If you need any help regarding the installation process, you can look out for the code blocks installation tutorial on Crazy Geeks, that is this channel. Okay, let's try to dissect what is going on here. These two steps at the top is termed as header file. Header file means we are trying to include some resource which contains the information regarding the functions that's being used in our program. STD standing for standard, IU standing for input output. STD standard, LIB standing for library.s means header file. This particular main function indicates application's entry point, that is, this is the entry point for our application. Let's say there are other blocks as well, then in that case also our program will begin from this particular point. Main means application's entry point, bracket open and close, signaling that this is function. INT stands for function with return type, that is, it will expect something in return. If it was not the type of expecting something in return, then we would have written something like void. But let's leave it unchanged here. I'm not going to dive into types of functions at this early point. Program flow enters here. Printf means function that is being used for displaying the content. So whenever we need to display something, we'll be using printf function that is used for printing purpose. This particular information of printf is included here. Standard input output. Now this is the content we expect as our output of this particular program. When we build and run this, we'll be getting this output. .exe means executable file. This is the first program's output. This is the application we just built here. And in this part, one thing to note down here is, especially in case of C programming language, whatever begins eventually comes to an end. Bracket opens here, it eventually comes to an end at this point. Inverted commas begins here, it eventually comes to an end here. Return 0 signals the ending point of our program. That is, it's trying to tell the system that the program has successfully executed. Process return 0, that is, we have successfully reached at this point. Now we can write anything as per our requirement. Let's write new stubs. This particular semicolon is termed as terminator. It indicates application's entry point. And this particular /n is termed as escape sequence. This /n stands for new line feed. We can write this /n here as well as here as per our choice. I'm going to write, well, it has to close here. Now we will run this process. Hello world. Then let's write new stuff. So you can write any of the characters as per your requirement within this area. Let's try to remove this particular semicolon and try to build and run. There is one error expected semicolon before return. This particular error is termed as obviously error, that is bug, and the process of removing this particular bug is termed as debugging process. I'm going to include semicolon here, build and run. Output is going to be provided here. Up to this point, printf is used for displaying purpose and whose information is included using stdio.s. Then why stdlib.s? There is no harm on removing stdlib at this point. Build and run, there will be no change in the output, but I'm going to leave it as it is because it's not going to do any harm to us. Now we are able to display anything as per our requirement, but while writing any programs, we need to make sure that particular program we have just written is useful to other people. So that leads us to taking user input, or let's say some mathematical calculations. Suppose we need to play around with some integer numbers, then we'll be writing int, that is data type integer type, and I'm going to name that place as a. This particular line is termed as variable declaration. Int standing for integer data type. This is termed as variable. Variable means we could vary or change the value of this particular entity. And talking about variables, variable is totally user defined. We try to make it more meaningful. Int equals 10. It means we are asking the system for space allocation to store integer number and naming that space as a, and on that space we'll be storing number 10. But let's try to access this value. A is a. If we just build and run, then output is going to be what? A is a. But this is not what we expected. We need number. For that we'll be using format specifiers. %d is the format specifier for integer numbers. So whenever the system or compiler meets %d, it will look upon this side for whose value we are asking to display. In this case, we need to display the value of a. So a is integer number whose value we need, value of a. Let's build and run. A is 10, no problem. Now b equals 20. Again, let's display line break. Then b is integer number, value of b is required to us. Press F9 or build and run. A is 10 and b is 20. Now what about summation of a and b? We won't be writing 30 because system needs to take care of this particular requirement, otherwise there will be no point in writing this program. Summation of a and b. Now let's display the output as sum is integer number whose value we need, value of c, and we need to insert /n here, as well as I'll be inserting /n at the end as well. Now build and run. Awesome. A is 10, b is 20, sum is 30. But we aren't providing the flexibility to the user, because each and every time whenever they are running this program, they will be provided with summation of 10 and 20, as if the result 30 is the de facto standard on calculation mechanism, which is not the case. So what should be done? We should provide mechanism for taking user input, that is the users should be able to enter their value for calculation. So rather than setting values, we'll be normally declaring the variables and naming those three spaces as A, B, and C. Now we'll be asking for user input. Enter two numbers or enter value of A and B, whatever you prefer. Then in order to take user input, we'll be using scanf function, whose definition is included here, standard input output. Now while dealing with scanf, what we need to do is we need to tell the system how many numbers are we going to take. I'm telling number because we have declared the variable as integer. If it was character, I would have gone with characters, but for now, under scanf function, what we need to tell is how many inputs are we going to take care of. There are two integer numbers which will be provided as input. So for those two integer numbers, I'll be writing 2%d, comma. Then where to store those particular inputs? That is value of A and B. A will be stored on the location where the space for A is being allocated, that is address of A or %A, comma, second %B. Here we are taking two integer numbers as input and storing those inputs on the space allocated for A, that is %A and %B. Now input is taken, we'll be writing our formula, that is summation of A and B. Now we'll be displaying the final result. Sum is integer number whose value we need, value of C. Now let's build and run. Into two numbers. Now scanf keeps on waiting for user input. I'll be entering %222, enter. It's an integer number. Where to store? On address of A. It's equivalent to int A equals 222, 333. C equals summation of A and B. Now sum is 555. Pretty much cool. Now we'll be able to handle various sort of calculations. Now let's say we need to calculate the difference. I'll be writing int C equals A minus B. Then I need to display the difference is integer number whose value we need, value of C. Let's try to run. Wow, there is some problem. Redeclaration of C with no linkage. That is, we're telling the system to allocate two space and naming those spaces C. That is problematic. We don't need to redeclare it, and it's not going to work as well. Into two numbers, first number 33, second number 22, summation is 55, and on this case C equals A minus B, that is 33 minus 22. Difference is 11. Here one thing to note down here is initially the value of C was 55, now it's being changed to 11, which means we're able to vary the value of C. That's why A, B and C are termed as variables, which are totally user defined. Similarly, we can carry out the multiplication process. Product is integer C. One thing, if you need to make it more explanatory, then what you can do is product of integer, and integer is integer. First percentage D, value of A, comma, second one, value of B, comma, final format specifier percentage D is going to be the value of C. Now build and run. 2 times 3, sorry, 23 and 3. Let me insert slash in here, press F9, 2 and 3. Sum is 5, difference is -1, product is 6, product 2 and 3 is 6, and returning of value is 0. So far so good. Now let's say we need to check whether this particular value c is greater than 20 or not. For that we'll be using if statement. If test condition is true, we need to carry out this particular operations, otherwise else. This is tough. This is termed as if else statement. If test condition is true, let's set some test condition. If c is greater than 20, then this particular program's flow should enter here within this block of if statement and display something like this sum is greater than 20, else it should display sum is less than 20. I'll be placing here multiple line breaks. Let's press F9, or you can just press build and run. This one is variable declaration. Now enter two numbers, 22 and 33. A equals 22 and B equals 33, C equals 55. Now this will display sum is 55. Now if test condition is true, it will ask is 55 greater than 20, right? So it should enter this particular block and display sum is greater than 20. What will happen if we enter 2 and 3 as value of A and B? 5. It will ask is 5 greater than 20? No. Anything other than this particular test condition being satisfied, it will enter inside else block. So the output is going to be sum is less than 20. What will happen if we just enter something like 12 and 8 is our input? 20. Is 20 greater than 20? No. So it should enter inside else block. But it appears a bit weird. So what we can do is we can set the condition as if c is greater than or equals 20, sum is greater than or equals 20. Build and run. 55 is greater than 20, so it should display sum is greater than or equals 20. On input being provided is 12 and 8. 20 is not greater than 20, but it's equals 20, so it will again enter this block. If test condition is true, do this, else carry out this task. That is how if else statement works. And make sure not to use semicolon here, otherwise you'll be having problem like else without a previous if, because you have terminated the if condition here. The working mechanism of if else is pretty much on Boolean logic. That is, if it's not yes, then it's definitely going to be no. But on real-time scenario, just the logic of 0 and 1, that is yes and no, is not going to work. Let's say we have some number 30 and another number is 50. We can't just tell it's greater than or equals 20, because on certain scenarios, let's say in case of grading systems, we have to deal with multiple test conditions. For that we'll be using if else if. Here sum is greater than or equals 20. Now let's write some more steps, like if c is greater than 15, it should display sum is sum is greater than 15. We can write any number of else if statements here. If C is greater than 10, then display sum is greater than 10. Otherwise, that is else, it's less than 10. In between if else, we can set n number of test conditions as per our requirement. And the beauty of if else if is it's mutually exclusive. That is, whenever one of the test condition is satisfied, remaining test conditions are not tested and executed. Let's build and run. 55 is greater than 20, so it should display sum is greater than or equals 20. But when you look upon these conditions, 55 is also greater than 15 as well as greater than 10, but once one of the condition is being satisfied, it won't move to remaining conditions. Sum is greater than or equals 20. Let's enter some input as 8 and 9. 17 is not greater than 20. Now it will move to this particular condition and ask, is 17 greater than 15? Yes, so it should display sum is greater than 15. You need to take care of ideal test condition setting, otherwise you will be running into some trouble as well. What will happen if you set the condition as sum is greater than or equals 15 and you set the condition greater than 20 here? Now build and run. 22 and 33. 55 is greater than 15, so it should display sum is greater than or equals 15. The problem here is this particular block is never going to be activated, because whatever value which is greater than 20 is always going to be greater than 15. So this is the point you need to take care of while writing or setting these conditions. Let's say at this point we're in the mood to do some more checkings. Okay, in order to minimize the length, I'm going to remove this block and this block as well. Now it will check whether it's greater than 20 or not. Now let's do some modification regarding the requirement. Before checking whether particular number is greater than or less than 20, we need to make sure that particular number, the final result, should be positive 1. For that, what we need to do is we need to set condition. If C is greater than 0, then the checking process has to be implemented. Let's try to make it more manageable. Else I'm going to write it down as calculated sum is negative number. Here what we have done on this case is, if C is greater than 0, if the final result is positive number, then only enter this block and check it. This is termed as nested if. Whenever similar entity is placed inside similar entity, then that is termed as nesting, and in this case it's termed as nested if. Let's build and run. 22 and 33. 55 is greater than 0, so it should enter here and carry out the checking process. 55 is greater than 20. so it should display sum is greater than or equals 20. Now again build and run. -2 and -3, sum is -5. -5 is not greater than 0, that's why it will enter else block and provide calculated sum is negative number. Okay, awesome. If else if and nesting process is carrying out the task pretty much in fascinating manner, but the problem here is whenever there is numerous nesting being carried out, sometimes the program logic appears to be a bit messier or fuzzier, which will hinder the clarity of the program logic. On those scenarios, we'll be using another option provided to us, which is termed as switch statements. Let's begin the process. For switch statement, we'll be passing the variable on the switch statement. Let's ask for user input. I'm going to write enter your choice. This is going to be some integer numbers. For taking user input, I'll be writing scanf, then it's an integer number, %d, where to store it on address of x or %x. For switch, what we'll be doing is we'll be passing the value of the variable here, x. Just like the if else statement, if x equals 1, that is if case 1, you need to display something like Sunday. Then on case 2, you need to display Monday. When x equals 3, you need to display Tuesday, and so on. If none of the above conditions or values are satisfied, it should display the content within else block. Equivalent of else on switch is default. If none of the above case is satisfied, it will enter inside default block and display something like others. Now let's try to build and run this program. Into your choice, I'm entering 1 as my input. 1 is being passed here inside the switch statement. 1 and 1 is same, so it should display Sunday. Wow, it's displaying all of the statements here. What about entering some other values like 2? 2 is being passed here inside switch. 1 is not equals 2. 2 and 2 is matching. So when we look upon this particular program, the issue here is first case is being checked, but it's not stopping on other cases. So for that purpose, we'll be using break statements. Break. The task of the break statement is to take the program flow out from that particular block. Now let's build 1. Value of x equals 1. It's being passed to switch statement. 1 and 1 is same, so it should display Sunday. And then there is break statement, so the program flow will come outside of this particular block. Sunday is output. Wonderful. 2. Monday. And anything other than 1, 2 and 3 will display. Others are invalid. You can write anything there. The drawback of switch statement is that it only supports integer and characters. It doesn't support conditions like c is greater than 20 or less than 20. Similarly, you can play around with logical operators like AND or etc. The advantage of switch statement is the clarity it provides in order to maintain the program logic. Similarly, it's considered pretty much good regarding the speed as well, because list checking is carried out competitively inside switch statement. Now let's say we need to add two numbers again, or let's say we need to take any number from user, enter any number. Scanf obviously will be used for taking user input, and num. Now we need to check whether this particular number is greater than 100 or not. If it's greater than 100, then it should display greater than 100, otherwise it should display less than 100. We will then run this program. 200 is greater than 100. Now let's say we need to perform this particular checking for two numbers, then we need to copy and paste it. Enter any number greater than 100 on the one. 21 is less than 100. What about the requirement being changed to checking the number, let's say 10 numbers, then we need to copy and paste the same block 10 times, which obviously won't be a great idea to implement, because if that number keeps on increasing, like let's say we need to carry out the task for 100 numbers, then the number of codes is going to be pretty much insane. On those scenarios, we'll be using loop. Loop means continuous execution of any of the blocks for infinite duration or some limited duration. Obviously for some limited duration, for that we'll be setting the test condition which will stop the process. While writing any loops, there's going to be three parts. One is the initialization, that is the beginning point. On the one is going to be the test condition, which will indicate how many times we are going to repeat the process, and on the one is going to be increment, that is after each and every execution we need to make sure of increasing or decreasing the value. If we are beginning from 1 and moving towards 3, we need to keep on adding number. 1 plus 1 equals 2 and 2 plus 1 equals 3 and so on. If we are targeting to go down from 5 to 0, then we need to decrement the value. 5 minus 1 equals 4, 4 minus 1 equals 3 and so on. Talking about types of loop, there are three available loops to us. One is while loop, another one is do while, and the next one is for loop. The working mechanism of while loop and for loop is exactly same, only the writing process is different. On the other hand, do while loop is a bit different from existing other loops. Let's begin the process. Let's say this is our beginning point. This is termed as initialization. Now for while we'll be writing while this particular test condition is true, carry out this particular operation. For easier approach, I'm going to remove. I don't need to remove it, it's not problematic. While test condition is true, do this or execute this means carry out the operation. Whatever statements are being presented inside the body of loop, you need to carry out that. So this will begin from 1 and will move up to 3. Now we need to carry out the update process. Count equals count plus 1. So here at first 1 is less than 3, so it should enter here and execute whatever statement is being presented here. Then it will do the increment 1 plus 1 equals 2. It will ask, is 2 less than or equals 3? Again right, so it should re-enter the body of the loop and execute the statement here. Let's try to execute. Enter any number, 22 less than 100. Then again it's asking enter any number greater than 100, less than 100. That is, we have successfully executed the content here 3 times in a row. We can execute it as many times as per our requirement. To make it appear more easy, I'll be normally writing one single line. Test. I don't need variable num now. Test. We can change it to any number as per our requirement, and in the meantime you can print the value of count as well. From 1 up to 10. This is initialization, this one is test condition, this is the update. You can begin from any value. This will result in 5 to 10. Similarly, you can make the necessary update like count equals count plus 2, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and so on. Another loop is do while loop. On do while loop, before moving towards do while loop, what will happen if we set the beginning value as 100? Is 100 less than or equals 10? No. So there won't be any execution of the body of loop. Here test condition is being tested at the entry point, so while loop is also termed as entry controlled loop. On do while, what we'll be doing is we'll be telling do this while test condition is satisfied. This will again result same output 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. The basic difference is going to be visible here. Earlier when we set the value of count is 100, then there was no output whatsoever, but in this case we are telling do this. At first it will display test 100, then increment by 2, 1 or 2, and we'll ask is 102 less than or equals 10? No. So what happens here is, in case of do while loop, irrespective of the test condition being true or false, body of loop is activated at least once. That is the basic difference between do while loop and remaining other loops. Another loop that is most widely used in programming is for loop. We'll be writing all these steps here on same line. Initialization count equals 0 or 1, then test condition and update. Now it will be executed from 1 to 3. I don't need this condition here. Build and run. Output is going to be exact same. And if we set the value of count to 10, then test condition is not satisfied, so there won't be and execution of the body of loop. This implies one thing, that the working mechanism of while loop and for loop is exactly same. After the looping process, what we need to do is we need to use the functions. Earlier when we were talking about this particular main function, I was talking about function with return type and no return type. In order to use any of the function, at first you need to declare it. Let's say I'm writing demo is function name. Void is the type of the function, which indicates function with no return type. That is, it won't be expecting these return values here. Demo is the name of the function, which is totally user defined, and there is no arguments here. So this particular user defined function is termed as function with no return type and no arguments. This line here at the top is termed as function declaration, which tells the compiler we are going to use this particular function of this signature afterwards. Now we need to write the function definition. We'll be populating the contents here. Now we need to make function call, because this is the application's entry point. From here the program will begin. If we do not write anything here, then the content is going to be blank and this block is never going to be activated. If we need to activate that, we need to make a function call. That is, we need to call this particular block. This is termed as, this particular block is calling block, and this is termed as called block. So whenever a function call is made, control is transferred from calling block to the called block. From here, function call is being made. It comes to this block and returns back here. Function is also termed as mini program or program segment, which carry out some specific well-defined task. It is good at the moment. We can write anything here. Let's say I'm going to add two numbers. Enter two numbers, two integer numbers, address of A comma address of B, then C equals summation of A and B, and let's display the result as sum is integer number value of C. Into two numbers, then sum is this much. This is the first type of user defined function, which is function with no return type and no argument. We are not returning any values from this particular block. Now let's say we need to pass the value of A and B to this particular function named as demo. Then we'll be taking user input here, integer A comma B. Now while making a function call, we need to pass the value of A and B. These two values are of integer data type. Now I'll be writing integer A and integer B. Now when I'm writing integer A and integer B, I don't need to redeclare it again. This is termed as function with no return type but with argument. Program enters inside main block. We have done variable declaration, then enter two numbers 22 and 33. A equals 22, B equals 33. Now while making function call demo A comma B, value of A and B, that is 22 and 33, will be passed to this particular block, and we'll calculate the summation of these two numbers and display the final result as sum is 55. This is termed as function with no return type but with arguments. Similarly, if you need to return the value, we'll be opting for function with return type. Now we need to return this final value. Wow. Sum is integer number. Value that is being returned from this particular block should be displayed here. Into two numbers, 22 and 33. C equals 55. Return C. Sum is 55. It should display. This is termed as function with both return type and argument. You can play around by doing something like this as well. That is function with return type but no argument. In that case, you'll be taking input here inside the called block. Sum is integer. Value that is being returned after making function call to demo should be displayed here. Now build and run into two numbers. Sum is integer number whose value we need. Value that is being returned from demo function. The program flow will enter here into two numbers, 2 and 3. Return C means return 5. 5 is being returned here. Okay, this is how you can play around with function. The advantage of function is you can call the function as many times as per your requirement. So it's going to facilitate the code reusability. For clarity, you can use line break here. Some of the advantages of function is that you can divide the workload among team members by making new functions like int demo1, and you can assign this particular task to demo and the new task to demo1 as well. So it's very much helpful for workload division, similarly helpful for debugging process as well. And just to be clear, I'm going on much more fast-paced state, switch to wrap it up within an hour. If you need detailed discussion on those stuffs, then please kindly check the detailed discussion videos on the same topics. The basic idea behind this video is to provide you quick clarity of some of these stuffs for quick catch-up purpose. Now there is something termed as array. On array part, what we'll be doing is we'll be handling collection of similar data type. Let's say I need to handle 12 integer numbers, that is 12 values of x. If there was no array, we need to do something like x1, x2 and so on, which obviously will be a tedious task. So rather than opting for that, we'll be using arrays. Arrays means collection of similar data type. int x12 means we are asking the system to allocate us the space for storing 12 integer numbers and naming those spaces x0, x1, x0, x1 up to x11 from 0 to n minus 1. One thing to notice here is first array element's index is always 0. That is, first element is 0th indexed. Now let's set some values. x0 equals 22, x1 equals 31, and x2 equals 100. So whenever we need to display the output, we'll be opting for loop. I is less than 3 and I plus plus. I plus plus means I equals I plus 1. Now let's display the array element. X integer is integer number, first value of I, second value of xi. x0 is 22, 31 and 100. If you need to take user input, what you can do here is you will be obviously opting for another loop. I is less than 3 and I plus plus. Then you'll be telling the users enter the value of x. User input will be taken care of using scanf function. It's an integer number. It will be stored at address of xi, semicolon at the end. Enter the value of x, 55, 77 and 99. x0 is 55, 77 and 99. Let's say we need to calculate the sum. Then at that requirement will be writing something like sum equals 0, then sum equals sum plus current value of x, that is x0 or x1 or something. Now it should display sum. Sum is integer number, value of sum. I'm not placing this particular statement within this loop because I don't need to repeat the value of sum. 2, 3 and 4. At first sum equals 0, 0 plus x0, 2, then 2 plus x1, that is 3, 2 plus 3 equals 5, 5 plus 4 equals 9. If you need to check the current value of sum, what you can do is you can place this statement inside this particular block and compile and run. At first sum is 2, then 5 and 9, so the final result is 9. This is how it's carried out. And on string part, what we try to do is we try to deal with array of characters. For characters, char data type is used. Then you can write the name of the array. It's totally user defined. This is termed as string length. You can set any characters as its value. Now whenever you need to display, you will be writing something like name is string, whose value we need, value of name. Awesome. Now if you need to take user input, obviously you will be asking the user to enter the characters, enter your name, scanf, it's a string, so percentage yes, and where to store it on address of name. Let's build and run. Enter your name, tested, name is tested. Awesome. Now there are certain library functions like strings library functions like strupr. strupr standing for string uppercase. It will change all into uppercase. Similarly, there is some other library functions as well. This will reverse the string. Feel free to play around with all these strings library function. On some compiler, you need to include string.s as well, but in case of Bootlogs, you don't need to include it. Up to this point, basically we have dealt with collection of similar data type. but on real-time scenario we need to handle different data types as well. For that, what we need to implement is structure. Structure is capable of wrapping the different data types within same block. For that, we'll be writing struct here, then name of the structure, let's say student. Well, it's not struct student, then populate with the structure members, let's say name, string, and is. Semicolon is used at the end of structure's definition. And whenever we need to access the content inside structure, we need one structure variable which is totally user defined. I am naming that variable as yes. Now enter the name and is. Scanf string and integer, where to store it, address of yes.name for first one and address of yes.age for second one. Now we'll be displaying the output is name is %s and age is %d. First one is value of yes.name and second one is value of yes.age. Name is Arson and age is 22. Here, in case of structure, when we need to access the structure members, we need to use this structure variable and dot operator. Let's say we need to take user input for multiple students, then we need to use structure with array. And whenever there is array, we need to vary the index. So what we'll be doing is I equals 0, I is less than or less than 3, and I plus plus. Now we'll be asking for user input here. And on this part we need to vary the index. So what we'll be doing is si.name and si.age. And on this block we need to display the output. si.name and si.age. Let's build and run. At first I equals 0, 0 is less than 3, so it's asking here test 22, another one is test 1 23, and another one is test 2 25. So this is how we can handle different data types using structure. One thing to remember in case of structure is use of structure variable and dot operator. I guess so far so good. Now if we need to store all these contents using file handling mechanism, then we need to play around with the stuff like on step 1 you need to open the file, then you will be performing the operation as per your requirement, then close the file. On file opening we'll be talking about file opening modes. There are read, write, and append. The main target of the file handling mechanism is to store and retrieve the contents, like the earlier program where we have taken user input as test and 22, test 1 and 23. We need to store it on our local drive and retrieve those information as per our requirement. Okay guys, I badly hope this particular session of almost 1 hour and some more minutes was really helpful for you guys. If not, then nothing to worry about. The only purpose of this particular session was to provide you the basic overview of how various stuffs are handled using C programming. For detailed discussion sessions and tutorials, please kindly make sure to subscribe on this channel, Crazy Geeks. And to be honest, time flies, 1 hour flies within a blink. I badly hope this one was helpful for you guys. I'll be catching you guys with some more stuffs on upcoming videos. Till then, enjoy your time. Thank you very much.